Hi, I'm Jerri Hyde, Youth Services Manager at the Ames Public Library. Welcome to Well Read, a special program today all about the best books of 2014, at least according to the Ames Public Library Youth Services Department. So today, we have an idea, we have a plan, and that plan is to tell you all about the young adult books, graphic novels, and young adult nonfiction that we have here at the Ames Public Library, or at least our favorites. Today, I have Mary Gen and Tanvi, our two YA experts that we have. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks.
Are you all ready to talk about some graphic novels?
Absolutely.
And I think one of the biggest ones we need to talk about is Sisters, because of course there's lots and lots of talk about this one.
Yeah, so Sisters was written by Raina Telgemeier, and she's a pretty well-known graphic novelist. She came out with Smile, about a kid who has braces, and she wrote Drama. And so Sisters is, it's sort of a companion to Smile. So Sisters is about two sisters, Raina and Amara. And Raina is the older sister, and like a lot of kids, Raina always wanted a sibling, a younger sister. And so she's super, super excited when she finds out she's gonna have a little sister. Little sister is not quite what she expected.
Are any of them?
She cries, she screams, she poops, she's not fun to play with. And unfortunately, that sort of persists as the girls get older. So Amara is very independent. She doesn't really do what Raina wants her to do. So the bulk of the story takes place during a road trip. The family is traveling from California to Colorado. But interwoven throughout the story are these flashbacks, and they're very cleverly told on these sepia-toned pages, which is a really nice way to highlight that. So through these flashbacks, you sort of get an idea of all of these moments in the sisters' lives, all of like the eye rolling and the sighing and the foot stomping and the screaming and the fighting that lead up to this moment in the car, where they're stuck together and they're kind of cranky and they're annoyed. But some unexpected things happen during the trip that sort of bring the sisters together and make them realize that, you know, despite their differences, they really do need each other and they really do care for each other. So it's a really funny book. There are a lot of moments where you find yourself laughing, partly because it is funny, but partly because it's so universal. Like you could see, oh my God, I remember doing that with my sister or my brother or my best friend or whoever. And it's just a really simple story. It's just about family relationships and how despite whatever troubles you may have, they're also really the people you count on the most. So it's a really fun one, and kids love it.
And so being the littlest sister, and I've never had any young siblings, I remember or identify with being that person that nobody wanted, I know, that was fighting with. And it was never my fault.
No, of course not.
Never, never. So Sisters. Let's go ahead and go then to Tomboy. And what's Tomboy all about?
Tomboy is, it's a really fantastic book, and it's sort of in contrast to Sisters. It's all black and white, not a lot of color or sort of that eye-catching that Sisters is. But Tomboy is about this girl, Liz Prince, who's the author. It's a story about her growing up, and she has always been a tomboy and always likes to do things that boys are typified as doing. And she goes through life sort of not really liking to hang out with girls and enjoying the things that the boys do more and always hanging out with them. And as she grows older, she sort of is pegged as a lesbian or transgender or something like that. She's always pegged as something that she's not, when in fact she's just a tomboy. And it's a really wonderful exploration. I think it's a really great way for kids to sort of get into the mind of somebody who maybe doesn't fit into the gender norms and can sort of see what it's like. And I think the readers also grow along with Liz Prince because she's sort of, in the beginning, she looks down on girly things and she's not excited about the things that girls do and she just thinks it's ridiculous. But then she has an influence later in her life that sort of, it brings it out that, you know, maybe you're not mad at the girls. Maybe you don't resent the other girls who are the girly girls. Maybe you actually resent society and what they're doing. And it's a really sort of beautiful revelation. And it's a hilarious book. It's just really, really funny. And I really enjoyed this one.
And it's one of those things too, you know, when you're putting down the girly girl stuff, you're actually doing the same thing the girly girls are doing to you. So, I mean, it's kind of a reverse discrimination, reverse bullying. So as someone that likes the tomboy type of things too, and not the girly girl, it's very interesting to see that growth and that identification. So Tomboy by Liz Prince. Let's go ahead and transition into our nonfiction, our young adult nonfiction. And young adult nonfiction is, you know, very similar to J nonfiction, but more dicey, I think, sometimes in what it does, because that's what teens are trying to find themselves. They're in that identity and who they are and where they're supposed to go or where they've come from. And so let's talk about this one, because it's a very interesting read.
That book is amazing. It's just the greatest book ever. So it's Beyond Magenta, Susan Cookland?
I think so.
So we've been really lucky in that in YA Lit, there's been more and more LGBTQ books published. So every year there's just more and more. But LGBTQ is a really giant umbrella. And so you see a lot of books that have lesbian characters or gay characters, but you don't really see as much bisexual or queer or transgender. And that book really fills a giant hole in the world of YA Lit. So it's actually about transgender teens and young adults. And it's just stunning. So every chapter focuses on a different person. So there are people who are transgender, there's one person who's intersex, there's one person who identifies as genderqueer. So they sort of exist on this fluid spectrum. Not really here, not really there, somewhere sort of wherever in between, and it fluctuates. And the cool thing about this book is that the author sort of edited it down. So did all these interviews with all these people and edited it down and very, very minimally put her own thoughts and her own questions and her own interjections into it. So you really feel like these people are speaking to you. And there are so many things that stand out. The pictures are gorgeous. The pictures really make you feel like this is just a person. Like this is just a person being the person that they need to be. And there's nothing weird about it. There's nothing strange.
They are persons.
And there are people,
I mean, this isn't fake. This is the real stuff.
These
are real people in our world.
And it's not a book, I don't consider it like a niche market book. I mean, it's a book for everyone. So it's a book for transgender kids to see that, you know, their own struggles, if they're struggling, aren't unique. These stories, some parts are heartbreaking, but other parts are really triumphant and really life-affirming. And so it's really, you know, it lends a lot of validity to their own life experiences. And it's great for families and acquaintances to see that, you know, to help them understand what someone that they love is going through. And then it's important for the rest of us to know. You know, a lot of times we're guided by our own fear, our own misconceptions about people, but lives matter. And that's one of those books that really, you know, helps you remember that. It's amazing.
And I think one of the things that she does that's a tiny detail to somebody who's not the subject, but really shows her respect for the people who are there, is that she uses the gender pronoun that they prefer and the ones that they use to refer to themselves. So if they go by they and their, she will refer to the person as they went here and then they did this and this is their choice. And in every case it's different. And so I think that was one of the sort of subtle ways of showing how much she respects each one of the individuals. And it's, yeah, I agree, it's very beautifully done.
And I think it's, you know, you keep using the word amazing. You know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when I began my library career, this book wouldn't have even been a glimmer in it. I mean, you didn't talk about these things or let alone write a book about it that's in black and white.
And it's still kind of an anomaly, which
it is, but it's a very great step forward.
Yes.
And what books do are, you know, we identify with books, just like we've never traveled to Europe, but we read books about Europe so we can understand and identify or, you know, enjoy that area. This sounds like it's a good book to be able to maybe put yourself in someone else's shoes, or maybe you have those same feelings, and you can say, hey, I'm I can identify with this, and this is very helpful. So, and that's why books are so powerful and so wonderful that we can do that. So this is a great step, I think, in teen literature as well.
I agree, absolutely.
So let's go ahead and go, having just gotten done with a play and been involved tremendously backstage and all that kind of stuff. Let's talk about 5, 6, 7, Nate, a continuation of Nate.
Better Nate Than Never.
Better Nate Than Never.
This is one of my favorite books of the year. I love Nate Foster so much. Tim Federle has done a really great job of creating a character who's really innocent, and yet at the same time he's got this huge heart, and he just does all these really wonderful things. And if he does something wrong, it's hilarious, and it's out of his complete naivete, and it's just a really a wonderful character that he's developed. And so really, if you don't love Nate after reading these stories, your heart is 2 sizes too small, because he is just such a wonderful character. This is a sequel. You do have to read the first one in order to read the second one. But if you loved Nate in the first one, you will absolutely adore him in the second one. He's just, it's a fantastic extension, and there's a lot of, sort of balancing the friendships and what it's like to be in Broadway, and being a kid from a small town in a big city in New York City, and sort of what to do about your first crush and all of these things. But I think one of the most beautiful things about the story, and one of the things that I just absolutely love the most, Nate, throughout both of the stories, continually talks about how much he's been bullied growing up. He's this kid who loves Broadway tunes, and any kid can probably imagine how much he has been bullied, unfortunately, in life as a result. He makes fun of it. He's sort of joking about the number of swirlies that he's had and the number of times, he's been stuffed into lockers and things like that. But as a result, he and his best friend Libby, who's also had a fair amount of bullying, have made a pact with each other that anytime they see somebody else being bullied, they will step in. They will not allow anybody else to get bullied. And it's, I think, one of the most moving parts of the book. And he actually does. And he steps in and he stops a bullying incident that's not the typical bullying that somebody might expect to see. And so it was a really brave thing for Nate to do. And it makes the readers love him even more as a result. And it's a hilarious book. It's wonderful. It's heartwarming. And I can't say enough wonderful things about it.
Do you think people should read this?
I think everybody should read it twice.
Well, I know I enjoyed Better Nate Than
Ever.
Why can't I remember that one? So 5, 6, 7, Nate is going to be fabulous too. So go ahead and read that. And I believe you also know about I'll Give You the Sun, about 2 twins?
Yes. This is another absolutely one of my favorites of the year. This is the story of twins who, as they often are inseparable growing up and sort of finish each other's thoughts and know what the other one is thinking without the other one actually voicing it. Like, incredibly, incredibly close. And then something happens during their 13th year that severs their relationship. And neither twin nor the reader knows the whole story until the very end. And what Jandy Nelson done is really clever, because she alternates the chapters. One is told in Noah's voice and one is told in Jonah's voice. And she not only is alternating the chapters, but this one, it takes place when they're 13, and this one takes place when they're 16. So each twin knows half of the story. And as the story unfolds, it's sort of weaving all of the details together. And the fact that she can do it as beautifully as she does is just, it's just astounding. She is a phenomenally gifted writer, and not only the fact that she's able to weave these 2 plots together, but also the way that she does it. And every sentence is so well crafted. Like, I was looking through and trying to find a quote, and I was like, pick any sentence, and it's just so beautifully written that it's hard not to really love this story. And I would encourage readers to actually go to her website, because she does reference a lot of art. And if you go to her website, she has pictures of all of the art that she actually references in here. So it's a nice sort of place where it's all brought together in one place and readers can get an idea of it.
Fascinating in today's world that we can reference the web and find her website and find additional information. I mean, that's just fascinating too. So, twins have always been that I've always thought that twins always love each other and always know what the other is doing and all that. I stereotype them in that way. And in this case, it's not the case. They do have some difficulties along the way, and you'll have to read the whole story to find out how and why, right?
Yes.
Grasshopper Jungle. It's bright and green. It looks like a good cover.
So Grasshopper Jungle by Andrew Smith. And Andrew Smith actually is so prolific of an author that he published 2 books in 2014 that have all been like on the best of lists, both books. I picked that one. Grasshopper Jungle is the weirdest book in YA fiction. I mean, it's definitely the weirdest in 2014.
And is it because it's set in Iowa?
It's just...
I can't, sorry to put you on the spot.
I can't even. So it is set in Iowa. It's set in a fictional town that's outside of the real town of Waterloo. And it's about a boy named Austin and his best friend Robbie. And Austin and Robbie are like 16 or so, and they're very, very typical teenage boys. So they skateboard, they drive around in their truck, they're basically get into trouble and trying to find ways to entertain themselves in this really small town that they live in. And so during one of their like driving around at night kind of adventures, they start a series of events that unleashes an army of 6-foot-tall praying mantises in their town. So totally, typical day in Iowa. And so it ends up being up to them to save the world, because what do praying mantises do? They eat and they mate. And I don't know if you know how many children praying mantises have, but it's a lot. And when they're 6 feet tall, I mean, it's insane. And so they are going to end up, taking over the planet. And so it's up to these 2 kids to stop them. So it's an incredibly bizarre story. And I have to say that I haven't read every single YA book in the world. But I feel pretty confident in saying that no one has a voice like Andrew Smith. You see it in all of his books. He excels at a number of things. He writes stories that are really weird, but really honest and really beautiful. And that's a pretty big talent, to write weird and beautiful at the same time. He writes passages that make you laugh and cry at the same time. And unlike any other author, I think maybe Sherman Alexie maybe comes closest. He absolutely nails teenage boys' voices. You see a lot in YA lit teenage boys. They seem a little bit too cool, a little bit too slick, a little bit too confident with girls or whoever. Andrew Smith's characters aren't really like that. They're not John Green kind of characters. Austin's best friend in this book is Robbie, and Austin also has a girlfriend named Shan. And the interesting thing about this book is that Austin loves Shan, and he's getting to that point, he's been dating her for a while, where he wants to maybe take their relationship a little bit further. He's really attracted to her, but he's also attracted to his friend Robbie. And, he's always identified as a straight kid, and he's sort of like, I don't know what this means. Like, does this mean that I'm bi? Does it mean that I'm queer? I don't really feel this way about other guys. It's really just Robbie. Like, what is this? And Andrew Smith is amazing at pulling out those questions that maybe a lot of kids have. And we see a lot of LGBTQ books for kids, but we don't really see a lot of books where you're analyzing that really from a straight kid's perspective. And that's it's a subplot. It's not the main point of the book. The main point is really these grasshoppers. It is a weird book. It is an amazing book. It's amazing to find beauty in such a bizarre story.
And the cover's really nice.
It's beautiful.
Right. Yeah. It's like a
those pages, those neon yellow pages. I love.
All right, there you have it from Tanvi about Grasshopper Jungle. Now we're going with the same color again, the green. Let's go with Gabby.
Obviously, I love green books. So something else that we heard a lot about in 2014 was needing more diversity in children's and YA books. Unfortunately, it's still a very, very white world when it comes to kids' literature. And I was thrilled when I read Gabby. I was almost a little bit turned off by the cover, I'm going to be totally honest. But I'm so glad that I read it because that is hands down my favorite book of the year, absolutely. So it's written diary style. It's about Gabby's senior year in high school, and Gabby is Mexican-American. She's 17 years old, and she's just writing very honestly about the highs and lows of her life. And there are a lot of lows. One of her best friends reveals to Gabby that she's pregnant, and her mom's very religious, and she's really freaked out about telling her mom that she's pregnant. And then their other best friend is gay, and whatever, they're super chill with that, but they know that it may not go well when he tells his parents, and it doesn't. So there are consequences to that. And then Gabby, she has a really interesting relationship with her family. She absolutely adores them. She loves them. They're really close. But her father is a meth addict. So he drifts in and out of their lives. Her mom is kind of always on her back about her weight and like losing a few pounds. Gabby also feels sort of caught between being American and being Mexican. You know, she's lived in the United States. She is an American, but her mom, you know, identifies with her Mexican culture. And so Gabby's dream is to go to college. And her mom is like, white girls go to college. Mexican girls stay home and they help out with their family. And so she's caught between these two worlds. And then there's also the fact that she sees how her family members give her brother a lot more leeway and freedom because he's a boy. But there are also a lot of highs in her life. So she discovers poetry, and it turns out she's this phenomenal poet. She has her first crushes, her first boyfriends, her first kiss. It is so incredibly funny. Because it's written diary style, her thoughts are so accessible to you, and her thoughts are so razor sharp, and they're so witty. I absolutely want Gabby to be my best friend.
Well, Gabby sounds like a really wonderful, and I agree with you with the cover.
It's a weird cover.
But kind of what I'm sure she's experiencing in her thoughts
she's
and
in
her
pieces.
diary as that age. And the journaling and that type of thing is always so wonderfully productive, both as the writer and then as reading somebody else's thoughts, because you can identify with them as well. So how about if we do How It Went Down by Kikla Magoon.
Yeah, so talk about diversity. This is it's kind of a he said, she said kind of book, except it's not really, because it's about a kid who's shot. So it's a really intense book, incredibly intense. It's about a teenage boy, 17 or so, who is he's shot and killed by a white person. It's told in 17 different voices. And you got to really hand it to an author who can write in 17 different voices. Yeah,
quite the feat.
Yeah, and so what that really does, having all these voices, is it allows you to see how stories become so convoluted, and how all of the important details are sort of lost when you have all of these different people who have, you know, access to some of the facts of a story, but not really everything. You hear from the boy, his name is Tariq. You hear from Tariq's mother and his grandmother. You hear from the leader of a gang that he may or may not have been part of. You hear from other gang members. You hear from a preacher who's running for office and who actually is using this event to, you know, capitalize on it and further his campaign, and is going through this, you know, I'm glad I can use this, but I also know it's this terrible thing. It's an incredibly moving book because A, this is something that unfortunately we're all used to hearing about in the news, and B, Kikla Magoon absolutely 100% humanizes every single person. You know, and I think that we forget that these are real people. When we talk about stories like this, these are real people. The person who's shot is a real person, regardless of what they've done. You know, the people in his gang, they're kids. And yeah, I don't condone being in a gang, but these are absolutely real people. And so you actually get to see them as human beings. And I think that's a really important thing that, you know, especially with media coverage of these kind of events, that we forget about.
And I think it's a really wonderful way to make all of these current events accessible to kids. And it allows you to talk about it in a slightly removed way, so that you can sort of dive into this book and parse it out and figure out exactly what was going on, and sort of grapple with everything and it's a little bit easier than dealing with the things that are in real life, because real life hurts a lot more than fiction does. And this is able to take a step back and still deal with the issues, but in a little bit more accessible way. And you're right, I mean, she did a fantastic job of showing it's like a 360 perspective, and all of these characters are so unique and just really fantastic characters. So it's highly recommended from us.
So, how it went down. Well, let's see. We have one more left and very little time. So can you tell me a little bit about We Were Liars?
We Were Liars, E. Lockhart. Yeah, so this is about the Sinclair family. The Sinclairs are very old school, very conservative, very white, very wealthy, and they own their own island off the coast of Massachusetts. So the main character is this girl named, I can't remember her name.
I don't remember
Cadence?
Cadence. So Cadence Sinclair.
I thought she was very well named.
So Cadence Sinclair, every year she spends her summers at this island with her cousins, and she adores her cousins, and they collectively call themselves the Liars. So they spend all of their time boating and fishing and having bonfires and picnics. And despite some tension between the younger Sinclairs and the older, more conservative Sinclairs, it's absolutely idyllic. I mean, it's unreal how beautiful her summers are. Until her 15th summer on the island, when something happens, something that completely changes the course of her life, something terrible, and she has no recollection of what it is. And no one in her family will tell her the truth about what happened. It's an incredibly beautiful book. It's very poetic. It's really suspenseful. I was racing through the pages to find out what happened to her at the end, and it's so haunting once you get there. It's one of those endings that you won't forget.
And the cadence increases.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's when I read the review on it, and that's what I was thinking, is that it sounds like she was very appropriately named as a character in that. So, well, thank you both, Mary Gen and Tanvi, for joining me and talking about these very diverse books. And identification of who you are, and all these things, and all the shows, or all the picture books that we're surrounded by, all of 2014 copyright books that are here. All of them are ready for someone to open them up. And I would like to share with you a book that is considered a picture book, but it's called The Book with No Pictures by B.J. Novak. And if you don't know who he is, I'm sure many of people do. He's the writer of The Office, the television show. But he's written a book that kind of challenges everything, and that's what our books do, and they should do for us. He challenges the way we live, the way we think about others, the way we identify with ourselves, the way we think we can laugh and cry. We can look at the illustrations and be absorbed in the artwork. We can relate to the struggles of characters. We can meet someone that we've never met in our world. We can have giant praying mantises coming and taking over the world, or have princesses in black. Whatever the story, we are in charge of those words that we're reading. And that's kind of what this book is all about, is that this is a book with no pictures. So let me leave you with just a couple of the words that is in this book with no pictures. It might seem like no fun to have someone read you a book with no pictures. It probably seems boring and serious, except here's how books work. Everything the words say, the person reading the book has to say, no matter what. So when you're reading any of these books that we've shared today that you can find on our blog, please think about the words that are on there and see who you can identify with, and what does that book mean to you, and who can you pass it along to that will identify with the characters or the story. Until next time, thank you for watching.